Hi, welcome to First Chapter Friday. My name is Lucy, and the book that I am going to be reading from today is called Rolling Warrior, the incredible, sometimes awkward true story of a rebel girl on wheels who helped spark a revolution. And this book is written by Judith Heumann with Kristen Joyner. This is a work of nonfiction. It's Judith Heumann's story, starting from when she was a child to all of the things that she went to and the things that she fought for to be one of the most influential disability rights activists in U.S. history. She's telling the story of fighting to belong in school and society. Judith Heumann was 18 months old when she contracted polio and became paralyzed. And when she was 5 years old, she was first denied her right to attend school. Judy's parents were survivors of the Holocaust, and Judy had a drive for equality that was instilled early in life, in part by what her parents told her, by how her parents showed her how to fight. This is a young reader's edition of a memoir that Judy Heumann wrote called Being Human. And this book goes into Judy's journey of battling for equal access in an unequal world. The book is full of the history of disability rights and how they have expanded and grown in this country in large part to the actions of Judy Heumann. It's an important book, but it's also an exciting and funny book. The voice in this book is very relatable and can be kind of sarcastic and snarky in a funny way. And so the book balances very well humor and narrative and explanation. And the book is a wonderful example of representation and how there needs to be better representation in other books for all people. And so I will read from chapter 1 of Rolling Warrior. Chapter 1, Yelling at Blank Walls. I got sick when I was just 18 months old. Polio is a virus, kind of like the flu. Most people who get it are fine after a week or two, but some end up paralyzed and not able to move. I was one of the paralyzed people. When I got better and the polio was out of my system, I still couldn't move my legs or lift my arms. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. I can lift my arms a little, just not very far. I can lift a glass and drink out of it. I can hold a fork and feed myself. I can dial numbers on my phone, type on my computer, and move my baby toe. All the important things. Here's what I can't do. I can't go to the bathroom by myself. I can't dress myself, and I can't walk. I use a wheelchair to get around. I was born just after World War II ended. Back then, there were several polio epidemics. Everyone was scared of catching it. People didn't know how it was spread, and there was no vaccine yet, so lots of kids got sick. Nowadays, most people get a shot for it, which is why hardly anyone gets it anymore. For me, polio was no big deal. I was so little, I don't remember feeling sick, and I don't remember ever not using a wheelchair. But apparently for everyone else, me getting paralyzed was a big deal. I can understand how this would have been pretty big for my parents, since I almost died, and they had to adjust the house to make it work for a kid who couldn't walk. But once they made some adjustments, it was just normal life again. What I really don't get is how perfect strangers would assume that me becoming paralyzed was a tragedy. One day, I was considered a normal kid because I could walk, and the next I was considered a disabled kid because I couldn't. People still talk about that day as if I became an entirely different person, even though I was still the same kid. By the time I was 6, I was rolling around on my own. This was an extremely strenuous task, not because I couldn't walk and my arms weren't fully functional, although I can see why you would think that, but because everything in the world had been created as if we didn't exist. Streets had no curbs with no ramps. Houses had steps. Motorized wheelchairs weren't around yet. And you get the idea. So this means that I had a manual wheelchair, which required one to have strong arms to push, which I, of course, didn't have, and on a daily basis confronted curbs and steps that were as impossible to scale as the Great Wall of China. You know how some people think that if you pretend something doesn't exist, it will just go away? Even though thousands of kids were getting polio and ending up paralyzed, no one was saying, hey, let's make little electric wheelchairs so kids can see their friends. No one was thinking about it. And we weren't even the first disabled kids in history. Because for as long as there have been humans, there have been people being born blind or deaf or with physical disabilities that make it hard to control how you move, or with dwarfism or some kind of intellectual disability, or some other kind of thing. There have also been kids like me who become disabled after we're born through an illness, accident, or whatever. I think the logic here was something along the lines of disability is a blight on society. If you ignore it, it will go away. But I can tell you right now that disability is a normal part of life. And if we wish it away, that would mean, 1, we'd all have to go away because disability is part of being human. 2, most of my friends would have to go away, and that would be sad because they are some of the nicest, smartest people I know. And 3, no more Harry Potter because Daniel Radcliffe has a disability. But I digress. Let's go back to the time I was little and in a manual wheelchair. This is what it took to make a normal, everyday trip to my friend Arlene's house when I was 6. Phase 1. 1. Get my mom to push me down our ramp to the sidewalk. 2. Inch my way along the sidewalk. The key to getting Arlene's was this super tiny incline. If I could get myself to the top of it, I could use the momentum to coast down the other side. 3. Land at Arlene's. P.S. Arlene lived next door. Once I got to Arlene's steps, I launched phase 2. Now you'd think that inching my way up a tiny incline would be the awkward part of this expedition, but no. The awkward part was yet to come. Phase 2. 1. Sit by myself on the sidewalk, staring at Arlene's red brick house. If the car was in the driveway, I knew they were home. 2. Prepare to yell. 3. Shout at the top of my lungs, Arlene, come out and play! We lived on one of those streets where there were tons of kids and everyone knows each other. I was the only kid in a wheelchair, but this meant literally nothing to us. We were little and we just figured things out, like you do when you're little. If everyone was roller skating, we put roller skates over my shoes and I skated in my chair. If everyone was jumping rope, I turned the rope for the kids who were jumping. We didn't even think about it. Me being in a wheelchair just felt like me having straight hair when Mary had curly. Sometimes I think kids are so much smarter than adults. But inching around in a world pretending that disabled kids don't exist was not the worst thing about having a disability when I was little. I'll tell you the worst thing. I was 5. It was September. I had that fluttery feeling, you know, the one you get when something big's happening. It was the first day of kindergarten. I picked out what I wanted to wear the night before and got my mom to lay it out on my bed. That night, I couldn't sleep. When we got to school the next morning, my mom pulled my chair up the steps backward and pushed me into the building. I looked around at everything, trying to figure out where my class was, checking out all the other students. Everything was so alive. I barely noticed when a man stopped my mom in the hallway. I knew something was up, though, when I saw the look on my mom's face. Her mouth got tight and her eyes turned dark. Then she turned me around, tipped my wheelchair back, and bumped me down the steps out of school. When I saw we were going back home, the butterflies in my stomach turned to rocks. But I was quiet. When my dad got home that night, my parents had a long, whispery conversation, after which my dad's shoulders got really straight in that way they do when he's very angry. I didn't go to school the next day, or the next day, or the next. Then my mom told me I wasn't going to go to school. I was going to stay home with her instead. What she didn't tell me was that the principal had said I'd be a fire hazard, which means that if there was a fire, he thought I'd block the teachers from getting the other kids out of school. I didn't understand why I had to stay home with my little brother Joey while everyone I knew went to school. It made no sense. I could tell my mom thought so too, but her eyes just looked sad, like the brown leaves falling off the trees in our yard. The next day, I sat by the window and watched Arlene and Mary and all the kids on our block walk down the street together. They were talking and laughing. I swallowed really hard and turned my head away. I still didn't really understand why I wasn't going with them, but I didn't want to make my mom feel bad. I now know that my parents didn't get why I couldn't go to school in a wheelchair, especially in America. My mom thought there was a solution to any problem if you just tried hard enough. She was tiny and my dad called her Mighty Might. One of the first things my mom did was try to get me into the Jewish day school near our house. The principal told her I could go to the school if I learned Hebrew first. So my mom and I decided I was going to learn Hebrew. Somehow, she found a friend of a friend to teach me and took me for lessons literally every single day for one summer. until, according to my mother, I spoke Hebrew better than the other kids. And she called the school back and told him I'd learned Hebrew. But the principal, who was probably in shock that I'd actually done it, backtracked. I'm terribly sorry, but it's just not going to work, he told my mom. At the beginning of what should have been my first grade, the Board of Education called my mother and told her they would send a teacher to my home for instruction. This was the beginning of Mrs. Campfield, who started coming to our house twice a week for 2.5 hours. During those hours, I was supposed to learn to read and do math and do all the other things my friends had already been doing for 2 years. Mrs. Campfield was nice, but when you compare my 2.5 hours to my friends' 25 hours a week in school, the idea that I could catch up with them was ridiculous. It was around then that my parents started to get really worried that the Board of Education had no intention of educating me, which was actually the truth. By that time, I am sure some of the board members were getting tired of my mom trying to figure out a solution for me. They probably thought, why hasn't that lady gotten the memo? Disabled kids don't need to go to school. They're supposed to stay home or go to an institution. It felt really weird when my little brother Joey started school. Every morning I watched him on his way to school. When I saw him get ready, reaching for the door, I wished I could go too. Have you ever had the feeling that something doesn't make sense, but because everyone around you is acting like it does, you just kind of accept it? That was me. I process it this way. Mary and the Catholic kids on my block went to Catholic school. Arlene and the Protestant kids and my brother went to public school. And I went to school at home. We all went to different schools. And that worked for me, at least until the day of the boy. And I am going to stop there, but as you can see, there is some humor in there, but right away you learn about the world that is not accommodating to people with disabilities when Judy is a child. And starting at a very young age, Judy had to learn to fight. So that's just the beginning of her story. And this book is so inspiring and so important and so good. So I cannot recommend enough that you read Rolling Warrior by Judith Heumann and Kristen Joyner.